In this video, we're going to talk about the moral problem of genetic engineering. The first argument we're going to discuss is the benefits argument. It goes, if a practice provides great benefits to many people and violates no one's rights, then it is morally legitimate. Genetic enhancement and the production of GMOs provide great benefits to many people and violate no one's rights. Therefore, genetic enhancement and the production of GMOs are morally legitimate. So here we have an argument in favor of genetic engineering on the basis of benefits, the benefits created by genetic engineering, and because those benefits don't violate rights. But what might be a counter to the benefits argument? First of all, we might say that a practice provides great benefits to many people and violates no one's rights, but it is not morally legitimate. Maybe there's some further consideration other than benefits and rights that make things morally legitimate or illegitimate. Another counter we could run is that genetic enhancement of the production of GMOs do not provide great benefits to many people or violate no one's rights. So we might point out that these genetic enhancements and GMOs are actually providing harms to many people, or they are violating people's rights in some way. We might give an example. For instance, if we made a bunch of genetic enhancements to the crops and the bees spread the pollen from those crops everywhere, that may actually violate the rights of farmers in other counties that aren't using those crops, those genetically enhanced crops, and don't want to use those genetically enhanced crops. And it may even be that those genetic enhancements have some unforeseen harm to the ecosystem. The next argument is the conservative argument. This argument goes, we should legalize risky social policies only if we have excellent evidence that they will not lead to disaster. We lack such evidence when it comes to genetic enhancements and GMOs. Therefore, we should not legalize genetic enhancements or GMOs. So this is an argument against genetic engineering on the basis of the potential for disaster. What might be a counter to the conservative argument? A first counter, we could say that we should legalize risky policies. We should legalize risky social policies, but we do not have excellent evidence that they will not lead to disaster. So maybe sometimes we should just take the risk. And even if we don't know that this policy will be good, we should try it out anyway. Another counter might be that we do not lack such evidence when it comes to genetic enhancements and GMOs. So maybe we have good scientific reasons to think that genetic engineering in these cases is safe. And so in those safe cases, we should be able to use it. A next argument is the inequality argument. It goes, if a social policy is very likely to increase inequality by improving the lives of the better off and leaving the worse off behind, then that social policy is immoral. Allowing genetic engineering is very likely to increase inequality by improving the lives of the better off and leaving the worse off behind. Therefore, allowing genetic engineering is an immoral social policy. So here we have an argument against genetic engineering, but on the basis of the potential for inequalities. What might be a counter to the inequality argument? A first counter might be that a social policy is very likely to increase inequality by improving the lives of the better off and leaving the worse off behind, but that social policy is not immoral. So maybe the fact of inequality does not make that state of affairs immoral by itself. Maybe the inequality is justified by the increase of benefits provided. A second counter might be that allowing genetic engineering is not very likely to increase inequality by improving the lives of the better off or leaving the worse off behind. So maybe if we allowed genetic engineering, maybe it would become an egalitarian practice. Maybe everyone would be able to use it. Now, if the practice costs a lot of money, this would seem implausible, and it seems like genetic engineering probably would cost a lot of money, so it seems like the rich would be able to benefit from it more than the poor. But maybe under certain conditions, we could say that it would benefit everybody, and therefore it should be allowed. Another argument is the authenticity argument. This argument goes, if a practice undermines our authenticity, then it is immoral. Genetic enhancement undermines our authenticity, therefore genetic enhancement is immoral. So this is an argument against genetic enhancement on the basis of considerations of authenticity. So what might be a counter to the authenticity argument? Well, for one, a practice may undermine our authenticity but not be immoral. So maybe authenticity is not necessarily a moral consideration. Maybe authenticity is an aesthetic consideration. Maybe it's a personal consideration that we shouldn't consider when we're making moral considerations. Another counter might be that genetic enhancement does not undermine our authenticity. So it's unclear why genetic enhancement would have to undermine our authenticity. So presumably our authenticity has something to do with being our true self. And genetic enhancement is actually changing us and making us different, making us not our true self anymore. But if we chose to genetically enhance ourselves, then we chose this alteration to our true self. So wouldn't that be an authentic expression of our true self? Or would it not be? It's not clear. It would depend on your theory of what authenticity means. Another argument is the unnaturalness argument. This argument goes that unnatural actions are immoral, genetic engineering is unnatural, therefore genetic engineering is immoral. So again, an argument against genetic engineering, but on the basis of naturalness. So what might be some counters to the naturalness argument? The first counter is that we might say that unnatural actions are not immoral. So maybe there are unnatural things that we do, and those natural things are perfectly moral. Maybe there are some natural things we do that are immoral. A second counter we might run is that genetic engineering is not unnatural. So there are lots of different kinds of engineering: chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. It's not clear that any of these kinds of engineering is natural. They're natural in the sense that the engineer is following the rules that are imposed by physics, so the laws of nature. They're natural in that sense. But things like skyscrapers and chemical plants and computers don't exist in nature as we've engineered them, so they're, in that sense, unnatural. It's not clear why genetic engineering would be any more or less unnatural than these kinds of engineering, and it's not clear why these other kinds of engineering are particularly unnatural themselves, because they follow the laws of nature. In order to say that genetic engineering is unnatural, we would probably want to give some definition of human nature and say that genetic engineering is violating that definition of human nature. But it's not necessarily clear that people would accept any given definition of human nature that we provide. Another argument is the playing God argument. This argument goes, we are morally forbidden from playing God. Engaging in genetic engineering amounts to playing God. Therefore, we are morally forbidden from engaging in genetic engineering. So again, an argument against genetic engineering, but this time on the basis of a theological argument. So what might be a counter to the playing God argument? Well, firstly, we might say that we are not morally forbidden from playing God. Maybe we could say we do things all the time that in a sense are playing God, because if we humans are in the image of God or something like God, if we do things that God does, in all those cases we're playing God. For example, when we give birth, we are creating a new human. If God created humans, then is giving birth kind of like playing God? It's not clear why we would be forbidden from giving birth, even if it is playing God. So it's not totally clear why generally we would be forbidden from playing God. Another counter is that engaging in genetic engineering does not amount to playing God. So maybe we're saying that God does not genetically engineer, or maybe we're saying that everything is actually just not playing God. If we're an atheist, then maybe nothing is playing God because there is no God. But even if we are a theist and we believe in God, maybe we don't think anything is playing God because humans are just doing what humans do. We're playing human, we're not playing God. We can never quite play God because God has properties that humans don't have. So maybe nothing, including in genetic engineering, is playing God.